So I would like to thank first the organizer to give me the opportunity to present the work that I start in Bordeaux at the Interdisciplinary Institute for Neuroscience. So today I will talk about, we will try in the lab to understand how the green gene mutation can influence the NMDA receptor neuronal organization. So I will go fast for this slide. Of course, you always all know what is the green-related disorder. It's a rare pediatric neurological disorder caused by the mutation in a gene coding for the subunit of the NMDA receptor, so N-methyl-D-aspartate receptor. There are seven green genes, including the green 1, green 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, and green 3A and B. I will mainly talk about the green 2B in this presentation. You have different form of mutation. It can be missense mutation, nonsense mutation, and frameshift deletion insertion. I'm not geneticist, so if you have questions about this different mutation, do not hesitate to see some specialists in the room. These green mutations are usually found during the diagnostic when neurodevelopmental disorders are suspected, or they can be also identified in patient cohorts that are built up for the scientific purpose. So we know that all these mutations are in a database that we can find in the internet. It's the ClinVar database, but for green mutation, you have two different databases, the Green Portal and the other database. You can find many of information related to this mutation. And please, I really recommend to use this database because it's really useful, well done. And I would like to thank the people that have built up this different database. It's really important also for the research. So just I want to pinpoint that the NMDA receptor it's really an old actor because it was first identified late in the 70s and beginning of 80s. But since it was identified, we know that the NMDA receptor play a critical role for many physiological processes like the neuronal progenitor proliferation, migration, neurogenesis, dendritic development, axonal growth and guidance, synapse formation, and maturation. So all these processes are important for the neuronal development, but is also important in adults for the neuronal excitability, inhibitory synaptic transmission, but also for the synaptic plasticity, a key mechanism related for the memory, necessary for the memory formation. But the bad side of the NMDA receptor, we know also that this NMDA receptor has been involved in many pathological processes, acute disease like stroke, trauma, epilepsy, drug abuse, but also in some chronic disease like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson and Huntington disease, in major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, autism, and also in green disorder more recently, and the anti-NMDA autoimmune encephalitis, which is a new pathology that came with in the literature, scientific literature. But despite the fact that it's really an old actor, we have only few modulators of NMDA receptor that has been approved for the clinical use, which is a problem because it's a really well-known receptor, but despite this information, the pharmacological and the therapeutical strategy are really complex, probably more related to the fact that the molecules that are produced have a poor efficacy and a side effect that is not compatible with the pathological treatment. So to understand why probably there are some issues with this, the fact that you have a really hard time to find the good pharmacological approach. We know that the NMDA receptor, it's a really complex machinery. It's a tetrameric receptor composed of two GLUN1 obligatory subunits and two additional subunits, two GLUN A, B, C, D, or GLUN 3AB. This receptor needs two agonists to be active, the glutamate and the glycine or D-serine, so which is really key for to activate the receptor. You know that the glutamate can bind the GLUN2 subunit, and the D-serine and glycine will bind the GLUN1 subunit. And if you look carefully at the specificity of this receptor, you have also one specificity that the transmembrane domain, which is key for the formation of the pore, is blocked by the magnesium, which is a really key property of this receptor. And also, you can see that the receptor have a long C-terminal domain, which play a critical role for the mobility or the addressing of the receptor at the surface of the neuron. So when the agonist bind the receptor, you can see that all these domains will move together, will interact, and this interaction is really key to open the channel and let the calcium and the sodium entry in the neuron. So the key particularity of this receptor and the complexity of this machinery, it's the biophysical and pharmacological and signaling property are really dependent on the subunit composition. And to make the stuff more complex, we know that the subunit expression is really dependent of the developmental stage, the brain region, the type of the neuron that are recruited, and the subcellular localization of this receptor. So to go a little bit deeper on that process, we know also that the receptor, I mean, the classical view of the receptor are completely, we know that the receptor are accumulated at the synaptic level. So, but the synapse is not the only place where you can find also this NMDA receptor. We know now that this NMDA receptor can be at the extrasynaptic part, and analyzing the signaling pathway that are activating by the synaptic or extrasynaptic receptor, we showed that the synaptic receptor are able to activate some signaling cascade, but if you activate by the same amount of the extracellular content, you will not activate this signaling cascade, meaning that the localization of the receptor is really key for the signaling information in the neuron. So not only the global NMDA receptor is important, but the localization of the receptor is important. We know also that the receptor is not stick at the extrasynaptic part and the extrasynaptic part, but is also moving around the synapse between the synaptic and extrasynaptic content. As you perhaps see in this movie, you see this little dot corresponding to one receptor, and this receptor moving around the synaptic and the extrasynaptic part, and this is play a critical role for the turnover of the receptor. This surface trafficking of the receptor is controlled by several intracellular proteins. You have a list of this protein here. You have much more of this protein, but you have key protein like MAGUC, which is a protein that form a scaffold protein to control the organization of the receptor. But you also have a key signaling protein that are important, for example, for the memory formation, like the CAM kinase 2. And finally, the recent discovery showed that even at the synaptic level, the receptors are not widely expressed and unorganized, but they are really condensed together to make the synaptic transmission more efficient and to increase the quality of the signal. So altogether, all this new dimensional aspect of the receptor has not been really characterized for the green mutation. It's one particularity of our lab, and we are trying to study the impact of some green mutation on this new functional and structural dimension of the NMDA receptor. So to illustrate the work that we are doing in the lab, we are mainly study the green mutation that affect the C-terminal domain of the GLUN2B receptor. And as you probably know, there are many mutations on that domain that are related to some disorder like autism syndrome disorder, intellectual disability, schizophrenia, and many other neurodevelopmental disorders. And today, because I have to focus, I will focus on one mutation, which is the mutation that transform the tyrosine 1004 in codon stop, which block completely the synthesis of the C-terminal domain of the GLUN2B. So you have a really short C-terminal domain of the C-terminal domain of GLUN2B. This pathological mutation is related to intellectual disability and autism-like syndrome. So when you remove the C-terminal domain of the GLUN2B, you will remove the possibility for all these proteins to interact with the NMDA receptor, which have really a big consequence in terms of physiology of and the signaling cascade. So the first thing that we look for is to see first if the tyrosine 1004 is conserved, highly conserved between different species. In this case, it's not really important, but I just want to illustrate the cascade of information we reach for each of these mutations. So we usually look for the conservation of this amino acid through these different species. The interest for us to do that is to show if your amino acid is really important for the function of the receptor. If it's less important, perhaps there are some modifications that are possible that not affect so much the receptor. So the second part of the work that we are doing is to, of course, see if the mutation induce electrophysiologic properties of, induce modification of electrophysiological properties of GLUN2B. So we go for the green portal and we look for the properties. We do like family is doing. So as you can see here, you have all the characteristic of the NMD, electrophysiology properties of the NMD receptor. You can see that the GRIN2B, this mutation, have no really modification on the glutamate and glycine potency, no modification in magnesium potency, no modification in pH sensitivity. So meaning that the property of the receptor is normal. So meaning no gain of function, no loss of function, as classically described for this mutation. So we decide to go a little bit deeper for this mutation and look to see if the receptor is well addressed at the surface of the cells. So we first use heterologous system, which is a cell line that are not a neurons. And this cell line, you transfect this cell line with the subunit, and to help us to better recognize this subunit, we add a fluorescence tag on this subunit, which let us to follow this subunit. So as you can see in this two movie, we are able to see the expression of the GLUN2B wild type at the surface of the HEK cells. And if you look the mutant, we also have this addressing at the surface of the neuron. So the surface of the HEK cells. So we do exactly the same analysis, but in more complex system, which is the cortical neuron that we produce in the lab. So we have cortical neuron from mice, and we can transfect this subunit with the mutation with the fluorescence tag to follow this subunit. You can see here that we have a nice expression of this subunit at all dendritic arborization of the neuron. Here you have another molecule that we usually do for to try to localize exactly where is the synapse in this neuron. So you have a synaptic marker, which is HOMER, and you have the expression of the GLUN2B subunit. If you look carefully here, you don't see really much difference, but we analyze a little bit more precisely the localization and co-localization the NMDS subunit in the neuronal arborization. So we analyze a branch of this neuron, and in the blue, you have the signal corresponding to the GLUN2B subunit, and in purple, you have the signal corresponding to the synaptic level. So we try to co-localize. If you have co-localization between the blue and the purple, you see co-localization, meaning that you have a synaptic localization of this subunit. If you don't have the blue and the purple together, meaning that you have an extrasynaptic localization. So if you look carefully the result, to go a little bit fast for that analysis, we show that and for this specific mutation, we see the area of the GLUN2B spot are smaller at the synaptic part, but are bigger at the extrasynaptic part, meaning that you have a mislocalization of the receptor at the extrasynaptic part compared to the synaptic part. To go a little bit more deeply in the mechanism, we decide to study the interaction between the different subunits of the receptor. We do so. We know that the NMDA receptor is composed of two GLUN1 subunits and two GLUN2B subunits. These two subunits are really constrained, close together. And if they are close together, the modification of the configuration of receptor can be modified. So to analyze the modification of the configuration of the receptor, we put two fluorescent molecules in the C-terminal domain of GLUN1, the obligatory subunit, and we determine the impact of this expression of GluN2B subunit on the organization of GluN1 subunit, meaning that is a transfer of alteration from GluN2B to GluN1. To analyze this transfer and this modification, we use the fluorescence molecule. When two fluorescence molecules are close together, if you activate one fluorescent molecule, some part of the energy that you do is transferred to the other fluorescence molecule. So meaning you have some kind of loss of energy. And this loss of energy can help us to determine the efficiency of FRET, meaning the efficiency of transfer of energy. What we observe for the GluN2B with the mutation at the tyrosine 1004, we observe that the C-terminal domain of GluN1 is affected by the fact that you remove a part of the C-terminal domain of GluN2B, meaning that it's not only because you have mutation on the GluN2B part, you can also have modification on the configuration of the GluN1 subunit. And this modification can modify the, for example, the affinity for a scaffold protein, meaning the protein that organizes the synaptic localization of the receptor. To go a little bit deeper again for the molecular mechanism, we analyze if the receptors at the surface of neuron are stable or if they are confined at the synaptic level. To analyze that, we use some fluorescence imaging. So usually what we are doing, we transfect the neuron. So it's a neuron, and usually the GluN2B subunit is accumulated at the synaptic level. So you can see activity and fluorescence at the synaptic level. So we will destroy this fluorescence. So you remove the fluorescence by using some laser. And after that, you stop the laser and you observe how much fast is the fluorescence recovery at the synaptic level, meaning that how much fast is the GluN2B at the extrasynaptic part can go back to the synapse. So we are analyzing the movement of the receptor at the global population. So we can see here as an illustration, so if you decrease the fluorescence, a little bit after you have a recovery of this fluorescence, and you can analyze the dynamic part of the receptor. If we compare what we observe between the wild type and the tyrosine 1004, we see an increase of the recovery after photobleaching, meaning that the receptor seems to be more dynamic at the surface of a neuron. But to go a little bit, again, more deeper on that mechanism, we use the single particle tracking. This method, it's really a method that can let us to follow one subunit of the NMDA receptor. So each red dot that you can see in this picture corresponding to one receptor, and we can measure the trajectory of this receptor at the surface of neuron, and we can measure the surface of the surface explored by the receptor at the surface of the neuron. So when we do that, we can analyze some characteristic like the mean square displacement, which is the surface explored by the receptor, and we can compare the wild type and the mutated form of the GluN2B. And what you can see in the graph at the bottom of this slide, you see that the receptor seems to be more dynamic because it explores a bigger surface. And this dynamic, it's much more important for the synaptic level and much more important for the extrasynaptic level. So to conclude, I just want to say that we know that the functional signature is really key. The channel properties are really key for the main mutant. But we know that also there are some other criteria that can affect the activity and the signaling pathway induced by the activation of the NMDA receptor. For example, we know that the synaptic content, the surface diffusion, the extrasynaptic or the total expression are really key. So when we characterize the NMDA, the green mutant, we are trying now in a lab for some mutant that we don't know exactly the impact in the function. We are trying to fill this graph to better understand what is the real consequence of the mutation in the NMDA receptor. So just for illustrate, I show you that this green mutation have no modification in electrophysiologic properties, no really problem to address at the surface of the cells, but we see modification at the structural organization of the NMDA receptor, modification at for the subcellular localization, synaptic versus extrasynaptic receptor, and also alteration of the NMDA receptor confinement versus mobility at the surface of neuron. So what we are trying now to develop is to develop in vivo analysis of the impact of this mutant in brain development, study the role of the impact of this mutation in neuronal migration, in differentiation of neuron by analyzing the layer marker, and the analysis of dendritic tree and spine directly in the brain of mice to be close to what's happened in the real condition for the neuron. And of course, study the electrophysiologic property directly in the brain can be also really important. And probably the last, but it's really also important, is we try to develop a tool to really manipulate these different domain of the NMDA receptor by developing a peptide to control, for example, the synaptic content of the receptor, nanobodies to interfere with the surface diffusion. And we also studied the classical antagonist of the NMDA receptor to see if this classical antagonist can also have an impact for different profile of the receptor. We recently demonstrated that the ketamine, which is an antagonist that plays a critical role for the, antagonist that has been described for the antidepressant action, this ketamine is able to block the receptor at the synaptic level. So you can improve the quality of the signal at the synaptic level by using low concentration of ketamine. So I would like to thank the team of Laurent Groc. It's a really pioneer for the NMDA receptor trafficking, and more specifically, Frédéric Delega, which is a neuropediac. I'm really lucky to have this two person in the lab to help us to better understand the consequence of mutation in receptor trafficking. Also, Léa Villetel, which is a PhD student, work on this project. It's really important. I have some collaborator. I didn't present the data that we work with Steve Trenelis in Atlanta. Also, Emily Pacari from Bordeaux University, which work on the more developmental aspect, and all technical and administrative facility, which play a critical role for our research. We have also funding, INR and Brain Neuroscience GPR, which is a local possibility to obtain money. And I also want to thank, not for funding, but really to pushing us Degree France, which play a critical role to push and to help us to organize a little bit the French community about the green disorder. So thank you very much. And I'm ready for the question if after.